The sound of her laughter cut through the dusty afternoon like a knife, causing heads to turn and frowns to form on the faces of Willow Creek's most respectable citizens. Zara Matthews had always been too much for this small frontier town, too loud, too opinionated, too everything. As she stood on the wooden sidewalk outside the general store, her voice carrying down the main street as she regaled a group of children with a theatrical retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk, the town council members exchanged knowing glances. This would be the last straw. The year was 1873, and Willow Creek, Montana territory, prided itself on proper decorum and respectability. The settlement had grown from a dusty outpost to a respectable town of nearly 500 souls, complete with a church, school, and the newly constructed town hall where the council now gathered in emergency session. "I move that we take immediate action regarding the Matthews woman," declared Mayor Howard Billings, his walrus mustache quivering with indignation. "Her constant disruptions have gone beyond what any civilized community should tolerate." Councilman Peterson nodded in agreement. "My wife cannot focus on her needlework with that woman hollering stories and singing at all hours. It's unseemly for a lady to draw such attention to herself." "She's scaring away potential investors," added Jeremiah Thompson, the town's banker. "Just last week, that railroad man from Chicago commented on the unusual atmosphere of our town. We all know what he meant." The vote was unanimous. By sundown, the town sheriff delivered the news to Zara on the porch of her modest rented room above the millinery shop. Banished. Zara's dark eyes widened as she clutched the formal notice. "For being too loud, Sheriff Davis, this cannot be legal." Sheriff Davis shifted uncomfortably, his weathered face betraying a hint of shame beneath his official demeanor. "Council's decision is final, Miss Matthews. You have until noon tomorrow to gather your belongings and leave town limits. I'm sorry." At 26 years of age, Zara Matthews found herself facing an uncertain future. The daughter of a traveling actor and a concert pianist, she had inherited her parents' love of performance and expression. After their passing 3 years prior, she had settled in Willow Creek, supporting herself by teaching music to the few families who didn't mind her exuberant nature and working part-time at the general store. That night, Zara sat alone in her small room, packing her meager possessions, a few dresses, her mother's sheet music, her father's collection of Shakespeare, and the small tin whistle that had been her constant companion since childhood. Tears streaked her face, but determination straightened her spine. This wasn't the first time her nature had made her unwelcome, but it cut deeper than ever before. "Zara." A soft knock accompanied the voice of Mrs. Holloway, the milliner who had rented her the room. "May I come in?" The older woman entered, her kind face creased with concern. "I've brought you some provisions for your journey." She placed a small basket on the bed. "It isn't right what they're doing, but arguing with the council is like shouting at a storm." Zara managed a watery smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Holloway, you've been kinder than most." "Where will you go, dear?" "I hear Copper Ridge is growing. Perhaps they're more accepting of women who don't whisper their every thought." Mrs. Holloway sighed. "It's nearly 20 miles through rough country. Promise me you'll be careful." The next morning dawned crisp and clear, a beautiful day that seemed to mock Zara's circumstances. She dressed in her sturdiest outfit, a practical brown skirt, white blouse, and leather boots that had seen better days. Her dark hair was pinned tightly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, her few possessions packed into a single trunk. A small crowd gathered to witness her departure, some wearing expressions of satisfaction, others looking away in discomfort or shame. Sheriff Davis appeared, leading a weathered wagon driven by the town's regular freight hauler. "Council arranged transport to the crossroads," he explained gruffly. "From there, you're on your own." Zara lifted her chin. "How generous of them." Her voice carried across the street, causing several onlookers to wince. "Good citizens of Willow Creek," she called out, unable to resist one final performance, "I bid you farewell. May your quiet lives bring you the peace you so desperately crave." With that, she climbed onto the wagon and did not look back as it rumbled out of town, though she allowed herself a few private tears once the settlement disappeared from view. The crossroads was nothing more than the intersection of two dirt trails, marked by a weather-worn signpost. The freight driver unloaded her trunk with a grunt. "This is as far as I go, miss." He avoided meeting her eyes. "Copper Ridge is that way, about 18 miles. There's a creek about 5 miles on where you can rest." Before Zara could thank him, he had turned his wagon and was heading back toward Willow Creek. She stood alone at the crossroads, the vastness of the Montana wilderness stretching before her. For a moment, panic threatened to overtake her resolve. She had never been truly alone like this before. "Well, Father always said every great performance requires courage," she murmured to herself, hefting her trunk. It was impossibly heavy. After dragging it several yards, she realized the futility of her plan. She would have to abandon most of her possessions. Opening the trunk, she quickly sorted through her belongings, selecting only what she could carry in a small bag: a change of clothes, her mother's locket, her tin whistle, and a few precious books. The rest, including her father's beloved Shakespeare collection, she repackaged neatly in the trunk and pushed it beneath a large oak tree. Perhaps someone would find it and treasure its contents. With her reduced baggage slung over her shoulder, Zara set off down the road to Copper Ridge. To keep her spirits up, she began to sing softly at first, then with increasing volume as she realized there was no one to silence her. "O Shenandoah, I long to see you away, you rolling river." The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down mercilessly. By mid-afternoon, Zara's throat was parched, her feet blistered, and her initial defiance giving way to exhaustion. When she finally reached the creek the driver had mentioned, she collapsed on its banks, gratefully splashing the cool water on her face and neck before drinking deeply. "Should pace yourself, madam. Drinking too fast when you're that thirsty can make you sick." The deep voice startled her so badly that she lost her balance and nearly fell face first into the creek. Scrambling to her feet, she turned to find a man watching her from atop a chestnut stallion. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of the Montana sky. His dark blonde hair was partially hidden beneath a well-worn Stetson, and a few days' growth of beard shadowed his strong jaw. A rifle rested casually across his saddle, but his posture was relaxed, non-threatening. "I apologize for startling you," he said, dismounting in one fluid motion. "Name's Adam Blackwood." Zara eyed him warily. Alone in the wilderness with a strange man was precisely the situation her mother had always warned her about. Yet there was something in his direct gaze that inspired trust rather than fear. "Zara Matthews," she replied, keeping her distance. "Are you headed to Copper Ridge, Mr. Blackwood?" "Call me Adam." He led his horse to the creek to drink. "And no, I'm headed home. My ranch is about 3 miles north of here." He glanced at her small bag and travel-worn appearance. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a lady like yourself out here alone?" Zara hesitated, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I'm relocating to Copper Ridge for professional reasons." Adam raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. "That's still a good 13 miles from here. You won't make it before nightfall, and these parts aren't safe after dark." Mountain lions, wolves, not to mention less savory human elements. Zara swallowed hard. She hadn't considered the dangers of spending a night alone in the wilderness. "There's a line shack about a mile ahead," Adam continued. "It's basic but secure. You could rest there tonight and continue your journey tomorrow." Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by suspicion. "And why should I trust you, Mr. Blackwood?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Adam," he corrected again, "and you shouldn't, not without cause. But I give you my word as a gentleman that I'm only offering shelter. I'll leave you provisions and continue on my way." Something in his straightforward manner convinced her. "Very well, Adam, I accept your offer." They walked in companionable silence, Adam leading his horse. Zara found herself studying him from the corner of her eye. Unlike the townsmen of Willow Creek with their formal attire and rigid postures, Adam moved with an easy confidence born of a life spent in the saddle and open spaces. "So," he said finally, What's in Copper Ridge that Willow Creek doesn't offer? Zara hesitated only briefly before deciding on honesty. Acceptance, I hope. I was asked to leave Willow Creek because the town council found me disruptive. Adam glanced at her, curiosity evident in his expression. Disruptive how? I'm too loud. The words burst from her with unexpected bitterness. I sing, I tell stories, I laugh without restraint. Apparently these are capital offenses in civilized society. To her surprise, Adam chuckled, a rich sound that warmed something inside her. Sounds like Willow Creek's lost to me. Before she could respond, he pointed ahead. There's the line shack. The small cabin was indeed basic, a single room with a narrow bed, a crude table with one chair, and a small iron stove. Adam efficiently started a fire in the stove while Zara hovered awkwardly in the doorway. There's jerky and beans in that cupboard, he said, nodding toward a small shelf. And I always keep clean water in that barrel. Should see you through until morning. Thank you, Zara said, genuinely moved by his kindness. You've been more than generous to a stranger. Adam straightened, his tall frame nearly touching the low ceiling. We were all strangers once out here. He hesitated, then added, I'll be heading to Copper Ridge myself in 3 days to deliver some horses. If you're still looking for work then, my sister runs the Paradise Saloon. She's always looking for talent. Zara's eyes widened. Talent, singers specifically. Her customers appreciate good entertainment. For the first time since receiving the banishment notice, Zara felt a flicker of genuine hope. I would appreciate that recommendation very much. Adam tipped his hat. Just tell Abigail I sent you. He moved toward the door, then paused. Lock this behind me. I'll leave my horse's trail visible if you decide to take me up on that offer. 3 days. After he left, Zara secured the door as instructed and sank onto the narrow bed, emotions warring within her. The events of the past 24 hours had left her reeling, yet this chance encounter had given her a new direction. Perhaps being banished would prove a blessing in disguise. The following morning, Zara awoke with renewed determination. After a simple breakfast of jerky and water, she continued her journey toward Copper Ridge, following the clear road. The day was cooler than the previous one, a mercy for which she was grateful. By late afternoon, the outline of Copper Ridge appeared on the horizon, a larger settlement than Willow Creek, with buildings sprawling across the valley and up into the foothills. As she approached, Zara could see the bustle of a genuine frontier boomtown. Wagons moving along the streets, businesses with freshly painted signs, and the unmistakable energy of a place on the rise. Unlike Willow Creek's suspicious stares, few people paid her any mind as she made her way down the main street, searching for an affordable boarding house. She found one near the edge of town, a modest 2-story building with a sign proclaiming Mrs. Winter's respectable accommodations for ladies. Mrs. Winters proved to be a stout, no-nonsense widow with shrewd eyes that evaluated Zara's worth in seconds. $2 a week includes breakfast and dinner, she stated. No gentlemen callers in the rooms, no coming in after 11, no loud disturbances. Zara winced at the last requirement but nodded agreement. She had enough saved to last a few weeks if she was frugal. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and a window overlooking the street. After washing away the dust of travel, Zara ventured out to explore her new home and seek employment. Copper Ridge offered several possibilities: a millinery seeking an assistant, a general store with a "Help Wanted" sign, and the town's small school in need of a music teacher 1 day per week. None would provide sufficient income alone, but combined they might sustain her. As she walked back toward her boarding house, Zara found herself pausing outside a large building with a freshly painted sign, the Paradise Saloon. Music and laughter spilled from its doors, along with the scent of whiskey and tobacco. Ladies of her upbringing were not supposed to notice such establishments, much less enter them, but Adam's words echoed in her mind. Singers, specifically, her customers appreciate good entertainment. Before she could reconsider, Zara squared her shoulders and pushed through the batwing doors. The Paradise was surprisingly clean and well appointed for a frontier saloon. A long, polished bar ran along one wall, tables filled the main floor, and a small stage occupied the far corner, where a piano player half-heartedly plunked out a popular tune. The clientele was typical for mid-afternoon: a few ranch hands, some miners, and local businessmen taking a break from their labors. "We don't hire girls for that kind of work," came a crisp female voice from behind her. Zara turned to find herself facing a tall, striking woman in her early 30s. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elegant knot, and her dress, while fashionable, was notably modest for a saloon proprietress. "I'm not looking for that kind of position," Zara replied evenly. "I'm a singer." Adam Blackwood suggested I speak with Abigail about entertainment opportunities. The woman's expression softened immediately. "You know my brother. We met yesterday when he kindly directed me to shelter on my journey here." Abigail Blackwood studied her with new interest. "Adam doesn't usually involve himself with strangers. Come to my office." The small room behind the bar was organized and businesslike, with ledgers neatly stacked on a desk and landscape paintings adorning the walls. "So, Miss Matthews, Zara Matthews, Miss Matthews. You claim to be a singer. What's your experience?" Zara straightened her spine. "My mother was a concert pianist who toured the eastern states. I performed with her from childhood until her passing 3 years ago. I'm trained in classical pieces, folk songs, and popular ballads." "And why Copper Ridge? We're hardly a cultural center." The direct question made Zara hesitate. "I was asked to leave my previous location. The community found my voice too prominent." To her surprise, Abigail laughed. "Too loud for their delicate sensibilities, you mean?" She leaned forward. "Miss Matthews, I run a respectable establishment, but this is still a saloon in a mining town. My customers want to be entertained, not whispered at. Loudness is an asset here, not a liability." Hope bloomed in Zara's chest. "Does that mean you're willing to hire me?" "That depends." "Show me what you can do." Minutes later, Zara stood on the small stage, conscious of the curious glances from the afternoon patrons. The piano player, a middle-aged man named Harold, waited for her cue. Taking a deep breath, Zara nodded, and at the first notes she released her voice to its full potential, filling the saloon with a stirring rendition of "Beautiful Dreamer." She followed with a livelier folk song that had several patrons tapping their feet, and concluded with a passionate performance of "Annie Laurie" that brought unexpected tears to the eyes of a grizzled miner in the front row. When she finished, the scattered audience erupted in genuine applause. Abigail, watching from the bar, gave a small nod of approval. $2 a night, 6 nights a week, she offered when Zara rejoined her. "You start tomorrow at 8, and if you can fill my tables like I think you can, there might be a bonus in it for you." Zara could hardly believe her good fortune. "Thank you, Miss Blackwood, I won't disappoint you." "Abigail," the woman corrected with a smile, "and I know you won't. Anyone Adam vouches for has already passed the hardest test in Montana territory." Over the next 2 days, Zara settled into her new life with surprising ease. By day, she secured the part-time position at the millinery, supplementing her income from the Paradise. By night, she transformed into the voice that quickly became the talk of Copper Ridge. Word spread rapidly about the new singer at Abigail's place, and by her 3rd performance, the saloon was packed with appreciative listeners. For the first time in years, Zara felt truly free. Here, her voice was not just tolerated but celebrated. The very quality that had led to her banishment had become her greatest asset. On the 3rd evening, as she finished her final set to enthusiastic applause, Zara noticed a familiar figure leaning against the bar, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his Stetson. "Your brother's here," Harold murmured as he closed the piano lid. Zara's heart gave an unexpected flutter as she made her way through the crowd of well-wishers toward Adam. He straightened as she approached, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that most of the saloon's patrons didn't bother with. "You found your place, I see," he said, his voice a deep rumble that somehow carried through the noisy room. Zara couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "Thanks to your recommendation, your sister has been incredibly kind. Abigail's a good judge of character." He hesitated, then added, "You have a remarkable voice." Remarkably loud, according to the good people of Willow Creek, she replied with a touch of her old bitterness. Adam's eyes, the same striking blue she remembered, held her steadily. Some people mistake power for impropriety. You shouldn't diminish your gift to make others comfortable with their own inadequacies. The unexpected depth of his observation left her momentarily speechless. Before she could respond, Abigail joined them, breaking the curious tension that had formed. "Adam, right on time. I need those horses for the delivery to Fort Harrison." "They're stabled at the livery," he replied, still looking at Zara. "4 of my best quarter horses, as promised." Abigail glanced between them, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Zara's been quite the success. 3 nights and already my profits are up nearly 30%. I'm not surprised," Adam said quietly. "Actually," Abigail continued, "I was hoping to convince you to stay in town an extra day. We're having a special performance tomorrow night. Zara's going to premiere some new songs, and the mayor and his wife are attending. It would be good to have family support." Adam raised an eyebrow. "The mayor? You're moving up in the world, Abby. Copper Ridge is growing. We need to establish the Paradise as a respectable entertainment venue, not just a saloon." She turned to Zara. "Which reminds me, I've had a new dress made for you, something befitting our star performer." Zara blinked in surprise. "That's extremely generous." "It's good business," Abigail replied pragmatically. "So, Adam, will you stay?" He glanced at Zara again, something indefinable flickering in his eyes. "I suppose I could delay my return by a day." "Excellent. You can escort Zara home tonight, Mrs. Winters doesn't approve of her walking alone after performances." Before either could object to this transparent matchmaking, Abigail was called away to deal with a rowdy customer, leaving them in awkward silence. "You don't have to escort me," Zara said finally. "It's not far and Copper Ridge seems safe enough." "I'd be honored to walk with you," Adam replied formally, "if you don't object to my company." The night air was cool and crisp as they left the saloon. The streets of Copper Ridge largely deserted save for a few late revelers and the occasional town watchman. Adam walked beside her, matching his long stride to her shorter one, his presence both reassuring and unsettling in ways she couldn't quite define. "How are you finding Copper Ridge compared to Willow Creek?" he asked after they had walked a block in comfortable silence. Zara considered the question. "It's more welcoming to someone like me, less concerned with propriety and more with authenticity, I suppose." "Frontier towns come in 2 varieties," Adam observed. "Those trying desperately to recreate the East they left behind, and those embracing the freedom of the West. Willow Creek is the former, Copper Ridge the latter. And which do you prefer, Mr. Blackwood?" His mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Adam," he corrected for what must have been the 3rd time. "And I prefer the freedom, obviously. It's why I came west in the first place." "Oh, where are you from originally?" "Boston," he replied, surprising her. "My father was a shipping merchant. He expected me to join the family business, but I had other ideas." Zara studied his profile in the moonlight, trying to reconcile the rugged rancher beside her with the image of a Boston merchant's son. "What brought you to Montana?" "The war, initially." His voice grew quieter. "After Gettysburg, I couldn't stomach going back to counting ledgers and attending society functions. I headed west as soon as I was discharged, worked as a cavalry scout for a few years, then started my ranch when the territory opened for settlement." "And your sister followed you?" Adam nodded. "Abigail was widowed during the war. She came west for a fresh start, same as many." They had reached Mrs. Winters' boarding house, but neither seemed eager to end the conversation. Zara lingered by the gate, looking up at this complex man who had shown her unexpected kindness. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the escort tonight, but for directing me to your sister. You changed my life with that simple suggestion." Adam's eyes held hers in the moonlight. "You would have found your way regardless, Zara. You strike me as a woman of considerable determination." The use of her given name sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Still, I'm grateful our paths crossed." For a moment it seemed as though he might say something more, but instead he simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "Rest well. I imagine tomorrow's performance will be significant." "Will you attend?" The question escaped before she could consider its implications. "I gave Abigail my word." He stepped back, replacing his hat. "Good night, Miss Matthews." As she watched him walk away, Zara was surprised by the strength of her disappointment at his return to formality. The following day passed in a whirl of preparation. True to her word, Abigail presented Zara with a stunning gown of deep emerald silk, far finer than anything she had owned since her mother's performing days. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, running her fingers over the luxurious fabric. "But surely too extravagant for a saloon performance." "Tonight isn't just any performance," Abigail replied, helping her with the tiny buttons at the back. "Mayor Crawford and his wife represent our chance to establish the Paradise as a legitimate theater, not just a watering hole. If they approve, the respectable ladies of Copper Ridge might actually attend performances, and that means more business." When Zara finally stood before the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The gown's modest yet flattering cut emphasized her slender waist and complemented her dark hair and eyes. For the first time since arriving in Copper Ridge, she looked like the performer she had been raised to be, not a woman forced to rebuild her life from nothing. "There," Abigail said with satisfaction. "Now you look the part of a headliner." The Paradise had been transformed for the evening as well. The usual sawdust was swept from the floor, the spittoons removed, and the tables arranged more formally with clean cloths and candles. A hand-lettered sign outside announced "Special Musical Performance by Miss Zara Matthews, soprano," and the piano had been polished to a high shine. By 7:30, the saloon was filling with a different crowd than usual businessmen in their Sunday suits, a few of their wives cautiously attending, and at the best table, Mayor Crawford and his elegantly dressed spouse. Zara, watching from behind the curtain Abigail had installed at the back of the stage, felt a flutter of nerves she hadn't experienced since her first performance with her mother. "They're just people," came a deep voice behind her. "Same as any others who appreciate music." She turned to find Adam standing there, looking almost unrecognizable in a well-tailored dark suit, his hair neatly combed, clean-shaven for the first time since she'd met him. "Adam, I hardly recognized you." A flash of self-consciousness crossed his face. Abigail insisted. "Said I couldn't attend looking like," and I quote, "something the cat dragged in from the back 40. Zara laughed, her nervousness momentarily forgotten. "Well, you clean up admirably, Mr. Blackwood." His eyes traveled over her transformed appearance, lingering just long enough to bring warmth to her cheeks. "As do you, Miss Matthews." Before she could respond, Harold began the introduction and Adam stepped back. "You'll be magnificent," he said simply, then disappeared into the crowd. Taking a deep breath, Zara stepped onto the stage to polite applause. The next hour passed in a blur of music and emotion as she performed a carefully selected program of classical pieces, folk songs, and popular ballads. With each song, she could feel the audience's initial reserve melting away, replaced by genuine appreciation. Even Mrs. Crawford, who had initially maintained a pinched expression of someone doing their civic duty, was dabbing at her eyes after Zara's moving rendition of Kathleen Mavourneen. For her final number, Zara had chosen Home, Sweet Home, a song that held particular poignancy for her now. As the last notes faded, the audience rose in a standing ovation, with Mayor Crawford leading the enthusiastic response. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the Paradise slowly returned to its usual character, Zara found herself surrounded by well-wishers, including the mayor and his wife. "My dear, you have a remarkable gift," Mrs. Crawford declared. "I had no idea such talent existed in our little community." "Indeed," the mayor agreed. "Abigail, you must consider hosting regular concert evenings. I'm sure many of our citizens would appreciate such refined entertainment." Abigail, who had materialized at Zara's side, beamed triumphantly. "I was thinking the same thing, Mayor Crawford." Perhaps every Saturday evening. As the conversation turned to business matters, Zara slipped away, suddenly exhausted from the emotional performance and the tension that had preceded it. She made her way to the small back room that served as Abigail's office, needing a moment of quiet. The door opened behind her and she turned to find Adam standing there, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "I thought you might want this," he said, offering a glass of water. "You looked thirsty." The simple thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. "Thank you." She took a sip, then asked, "What did you think of the performance?" "I think," he said slowly, "that Willow Creek's loss is even greater than I initially realized." Zara smiled at the compliment. "Your sister seems pleased with the mayor's reaction." "Abigail has always had big dreams for the paradise. You're helping her realize them." He hesitated, then added, "I'm leaving at first light tomorrow. I've neglected the ranch long enough." "Oh," Zara was surprised by the strength of her disappointment. "Of course, you must have responsibilities." Adam seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, he said, "I'd like to see you again, Zara. Perhaps when I return to town next month." Her heart quickened at the invitation. "I would like that very much." Their eyes met, and for a moment the small office seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Abigail's voice called from the saloon, breaking the spell. "I should go," Zara said reluctantly. "Your sister probably needs help." Adam nodded, stepping back to let her pass. As she reached the door, he said quietly, "You were magnificent tonight, truly." The warmth of his words stayed with her long after he'd gone. The weeks following the special performance brought dramatic changes to Zara's life in Copper Ridge. True to his word, Mayor Crawford spread the news of her talent throughout the community, and the Paradise began hosting formal concert evenings every Saturday, drawing a mix of the town's elite and ordinary citizens seeking quality entertainment. Abigail, seizing the opportunity, gradually transformed the Paradise from a simple saloon into a more refined establishment. She hired additional staff, expanded the stage, and even installed proper theater seating in one section while maintaining the traditional saloon atmosphere in another part of the building. For Zara, the change meant stability and growing recognition. She continued performing nightly, but the Saturday concerts became special occasions for which she could prepare more ambitious pieces. Her salary increased accordingly, allowing her to move from Mrs. Winter's boarding house to a small but comfortable apartment above the town's bookshop. Yet despite her professional success, Zara found herself counting the days until Adam's promised return. There had been something in his eyes that final evening, something that suggested possibilities beyond simple friendship. True to his word, Adam returned to Copper Ridge exactly 1 month after his departure. Zara was in the middle of her evening performance when she spotted him entering the Paradise, his tall figure instantly recognizable despite the crowded room. Their eyes met across the distance, and she nearly missed a note in the song she was performing. Later, when she joined him at a corner table, the awkwardness of their last parting seemed to have vanished. "You look well," he said, his eyes warm with genuine pleasure at seeing her. "As do you," she replied, noting the healthy tan of his face and the relaxed set of his shoulders. "How is the ranch?" "Thriving. Spring is always busy with new calves and preparations for summer grazing." He hesitated, then added, "I brought something for you." From inside his jacket, he produced a small package wrapped in brown paper. Zara unwrapped it carefully to find a beautifully bound volume of poetry by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. "I remembered you mentioned losing your books when you traveled here," he explained, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "The bookseller said this just arrived from back east." Touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, Zara opened the volume to a random page and read aloud. "If thou must love me, let it be for naught except for love's sake only." Their eyes met over the book, and something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that had been building since that first encounter by the creek. "Would you allow me to call on you properly?" Adam asked, his usual confidence giving way to a vulnerability that made Zara's heart beat faster. "Not here, but at your home, as a suitor." The directness of his request took her breath away. In Boston or New York, such a declaration would have come after months of formal visits and carefully chaperoned interactions. But this was the frontier, where life moved at a different pace and pretense was a luxury few could afford. "Yes," she said simply, "I would like that very much." The following Sunday afternoon, Adam arrived at Zara's apartment precisely at 2 o'clock, wearing a clean shirt and carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Mrs. Jameson, the bookshop owner who lived in the main floor apartment, eyed him suspiciously but retreated when Zara assured her that Mr. Blackwood was a respectable rancher and brother to the well-known Abigail Blackwood. "Would you like to take a walk?" Adam suggested. "It's a beautiful day and there's something I'd like to show you." They strolled through Copper Ridge, Adam pointing out changes since his last visit, a new mercantile being constructed, the expanding stagecoach station, signs of the town's growing prosperity. On the outskirts, they followed a path leading to a small hill overlooking the settlement. "I used to come here when I first arrived in the territory," Adam said as they reached the summit. "Something about seeing the whole valley gives perspective." Zara gazed out at the panorama, the town nestled in the valley, surrounded by rolling hills that gave way to distant mountains, their peaks still capped with snow despite the late spring warmth. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "So different from the landscapes I knew growing up." "Where was home for you?" Adam asked, realizing he knew little of her life before Willow Creek. "Everywhere and nowhere," Zara replied with a small smile. "My parents were performers. We traveled constantly: New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago. Wherever there were concerts to be given or plays to be performed." "That sounds exciting for a child." It was, in many ways. "I saw more of the country by age 12 than most people see in a lifetime, but it was also lonely. Friends were temporary, homes were hotel rooms or rented apartments." She looked out over the valley. "Sometimes I envied children who had one place they belonged to, one community that knew them." Adam was quiet for a moment, absorbing this glimpse into her past. "And after your parents passed, I tried settling in several places before Willow Creek. None seemed to stick. I was always too much, too loud, too passionate, too different from what a proper young lady should be." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Until Willow Creek finally made it official and banished me outright." "Their loss," Adam said firmly. "Some people fear what they don't understand, and most have never understood the power of a woman who knows her own mind and voice." Zara turned to look at him, struck by the conviction in his tone. "You're different from most men I've known, Adam Blackwood." "I've seen enough of life to know that convention often masks emptiness," he replied. "The war taught me that. Watching men die for causes they barely understood made me question everything I'd been taught about how life should be lived." They were silent for a moment, the weight of their shared confidences creating a new intimacy between them. "What was it you wanted to show me?" Zara asked finally. Adam pointed to a clearing about half a mile beyond the town limits. "That parcel of land there, I purchased it last month." Zara looked at the unremarkable stretch of flat land with confusion. "For grazing?" "No." He seemed suddenly nervous, running a hand through his hair. "For building?" "A house, eventually, yes, but first something else." He turned to face her directly. "Zara, what would you say to having a proper venue for your performances? Not a saloon that hosts concerts, but a true theater." She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "A theater, here in Copper Ridge?" Adam nodded, his enthusiasm breaking through his usual reserve. "The town is growing rapidly. The railroad will reach us within 2 years. There's going to be demand for entertainment, culture. Abigail sees it too, it's why she's transforming the paradise. But imagine a purpose-built space designed for optimal acoustics with proper seating and a real stage." Zara's mind raced with the possibilities. "But the cost, I have savings from the ranch," he interrupted. "And Abigail's willing to invest as well. Mayor Crawford has even suggested the town might contribute, seeing it as part of Copper Ridge's development into a proper city." "But why would you do this?" Zara asked, genuinely puzzled by his investment in such a venture. Adam's expression softened. "Because I heard you sing, and I believe everyone should have that opportunity, because talent like yours deserves a proper showcase." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "And because I've never met anyone like you, Zara Matthews, and I find myself wanting to build something that might give you reason to stay in Copper Ridge. Permanently." The implication of his words hung in the air between them. This wasn't just about a theater, it was about creating a future, possibly a shared one. I don't know what to say, Zara admitted, overwhelmed by the gesture and what it represented. You don't need to say anything now, Adam assured her. It's just an idea at this stage, but I wanted you to know. As they walked back toward town, Zara's thoughts whirled with possibilities she had never dared to consider. A proper theater in Copper Ridge, a permanent home for her talent, and Adam Blackwood, this complex, thoughtful man, envisioning a future that included her. Over the following months, Adam's visits to Copper Ridge became more frequent, and their courtship progressed with the straightforward honesty that characterized their relationship. Unlike the formal, restrained courtships of the East, theirs unfolded naturally, built on genuine conversations and shared dreams. By late summer, the foundations for the Copper Ridge Theater were being laid, with Adam overseeing construction during his increasingly extended stays in town. The project had captured the imagination of the community, with local businesses contributing materials and labor, seeing the theater as a symbol of the town's growing sophistication. For Zara, watching the structure take shape was surreal, a physical manifestation of how dramatically her life had changed since being forced from Willow Creek. Her performances at the Paradise continued to draw crowds, but now there was an anticipation for something greater on the horizon. On a warm September evening, Adam invited Zara to tour the construction site after her performance. The frame of the building was complete, the roof partially finished, and the outline of the stage clearly visible in the moonlight. "It's really happening," Zara breathed, running her hand along a rough-hewn beam. "I still can't quite believe it." Adam watched her, his expression soft in the silver light. "The acoustics expert from Denver says the design is perfect. Your voice will carry to every corner without strain." She turned to him, emotion tightening her throat. "Why are you doing all this, Adam?" Truly, he closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Because I love you, Zara. I think I've loved you since I heard you singing alone on that road from Willow Creek, completely yourself, despite everything they tried to take from you." The simple declaration, delivered without artifice or grand gestures, was more powerful than any romantic speech from her father's Shakespeare collection. Tears pricked at her eyes. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling both monumental and completely natural. "More than I thought possible." Their first kiss, there in the skeleton of what would become her stage, was tender and unhurried, a promise rather than a passion, though that undercurrent hummed between them as well. When they finally drew apart, Adam kept her hands in his. "Marry me," he said simply. "Not because of the theater or your career, but because I want to build a life with you, one where your voice is never silenced, where being too much is exactly what I love about you." Zara laughed through her tears, the sound echoing in the unfinished space. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Adam Blackwood." As news of their engagement spread through Copper Ridge, reactions were overwhelmingly positive. Abigail was particularly delighted, confessing that she had hoped for exactly this outcome since their first meeting. "Though I never imagined my brother would build an entire theater as a courting gift," she added with a laugh. "He usually just brings flowers like a normal suitor." Plans for the wedding moved quickly, with a date set for late October, just before the mountain passes might become snowbound. Making travel difficult for the guests, Adam wanted to invite from neighboring settlements. 2 weeks before the wedding, Zara received an unexpected letter bearing the Willow Creek postmark. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find a note from Mrs. Holloway, the milliner who had shown her kindness during her banishment. "My dear Zara," it read, "news of your engagement and the theater being built in your honor has reached even our small community. Several of us who always felt your treatment was unjust would very much like to attend your wedding if we would be welcome. Please know that opinions in Willow Creek have softened considerably, especially since Jeremiah Thompson's niece from New York opened a music school and demonstrated that culture need not be whispered. With warm regards, Margaret Holloway." Zara showed the letter to Adam that evening as they sat on the porch of his temporary lodgings in town. "What do you think?" she asked. Should I invite them? Adam considered the question carefully. Do you want them there? Mrs. Holloway was kind to me, Zara replied slowly, and it would be satisfying, I suppose, to show them how my life has flourished since they cast me out. That's honest, at least, Adam said with a small smile, though not perhaps the most charitable motivation, Zara sighed. You're right, spite is a poor reason to include someone in our wedding. But maybe there's value in showing that there are no hard feelings. That life moves forward. In the end, she sent a cordial reply welcoming Mrs. Holloway and any others who wished to attend. It was, she realized, a form of closure and acknowledgement that Willow Creek's rejection had ultimately led her to where she was meant to be. The Copper Ridge Theater was not quite complete on Zara and Adam's wedding day, but it was finished enough to host the ceremony, its first official event. Rows of borrowed chairs filled the auditorium, flowers decorated the partially completed stage, and sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating the space with a golden glow. As Zara prepared in a makeshift dressing room, Abigail helping with the buttons of her ivory silk gown, a knock came at the door. "Miss Matthews," it was Mrs. Holloway's voice. "Might I have a word before the ceremony?" Zara nodded to Abigail, who discreetly stepped out, allowing the older woman to enter. Mrs. Holloway looked much as Zara remembered, though perhaps more careworn. "You look beautiful, my dear," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "And this theater, it's magnificent. A true testament to your talent." "Thank you for coming," Zara replied, genuinely moved by the woman's presence. "It means a great deal to me." "I wanted you to know," Mrs. Holloway continued hesitantly, "the town council was wrong. Many of us knew it then, but lacked the courage to speak against them, seeing what you've accomplished here." She gestured around them. "Well, it's made some in Willow Creek reconsider their attitudes." The simple acknowledgement healed something in Zara that she hadn't realized was still raw. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." When the time came for the ceremony, Zara walked down the center aisle alone, her head held high, her steps measured to the music played by Harold at the piano. Adam waited for her on the stage, his expression one of such undisguised adoration that whispers of appreciation rippled through the assembled guests. Among the faces Zara recognized as she passed, she noted not only Mrs. Holloway but also Sheriff Davis from Willow Creek, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his Sunday best, and even Mayor Billings, whose decision had set her on this unexpected path. The ceremony itself was brief but deeply personal. They had written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Zara's clear, strong voice filled the theater without effort, reaching every corner of the space that had been designed for her. "I promise to love you without reservation," she said, her eyes locked with Adam's. "To support your dreams as you have supported mine, to build a life where both our voices are heard and valued, and to face whatever comes with the same courage and honesty that brought us together." Adam's response, though quieter, carried its own power. "I promise to love you completely, to cherish your spirit and your voice, to never ask you to be less than who you are. I promise to build not just structures of wood and stone, but a home where you are free to be exactly as loud as your heart demands." There wasn't a dry eye in the theater when they were pronounced husband and wife. The celebration afterwards spilled from the theater into the streets of Copper Ridge, with music, dancing, and more food than the small town had ever seen in one place. As the newlyweds moved among their guests, accepting congratulations, Zara found herself face to face with Mayor Billings of Willow Creek. "Miss Matthews, that is Mrs. Blackwood," he corrected himself, twisting his hat in his hands. "I owe you an apology. Our actions were hasty and unjust." Zara studied the man who had once signed the order for her banishment. Time and perspective had softened her anger, replacing it with something closer to pity for those who feared what they didn't understand. "Thank you, Mayor Billings," she replied calmly. "But as it happens, your decision led me to exactly where I was meant to be. Sometimes what seems like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better." As the mayor moved away, visibly relieved, Adam appeared at her side, slipping an arm around her waist. "Everything all right?" Zara leaned into his embrace, watching the celebration unfold around them, Abigail laughing with the railroad representative who had traveled from Helena, Mrs. Holloway deep in conversation with Mrs. Jameson from the bookshop, townspeople from Copper Ridge mingling with visitors from surrounding communities, all brought together by their unlikely love story. "More than all right," she assured him. "I was just thinking about paths not chosen and how sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "Speaking of destinations, I have something to show you." He led her back into the theater, now empty of guests, and up onto the stage. From behind the curtain, he produced a large wooden sign, intricately carved and painted with gold lettering. "The Zara Blackwood Theater. It will hang above the entrance," he explained, watching her face carefully. "If you approve, of course." Zara traced the letters of her new name with trembling fingers. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Though I think the Blackwood Theater would have been sufficient." Adam shook his head. "This place exists because of your voice, Zara. It should bear your name." Standing there on the stage that had been built for her, beside the man who had seen her value when others saw only disruption, Zara felt a sense of homecoming deeper than any she had known in her nomadic life. "Sing something," Adam requested softly. "Just for me. The first private performance in your theater." Without hesitation, Zara began to sing not a practiced performance piece, but a simple lullaby her mother had sung to her as a child. Her voice, unrestricted and powerful, filled the empty theater, wrapping around them like an embrace. As the final notes faded, Adam drew her into his arms. "I will never tire of hearing you," he promised. "Never ask you to be less than who you are." "And I will never stop being grateful that you found me on that dusty road," she replied, "and built me not just a stage, but a home." Their kiss, alone on the stage of the theater that bore her name, sealed promises that would endure long after the last guest had departed, long after the final notes of that day's celebration had faded into memory. Over the years that followed, the Zara Blackwood Theater became the cultural heart of Copper Ridge, hosting not only Zara's regular performances, but also traveling theater companies, musical ensembles, and local talent. When the railroad finally reached the town in 1875, the theater was among the attractions mentioned in promotional materials distributed back east, drawing new settlers and visitors to the growing community. Zara and Adam divided their time between the ranch and their home in town, building a life that balanced his love of the land with her need for artistic expression. In 1876, they welcomed their first child, a daughter with her mother's expressive eyes and her father's quiet strength. 2 years later, a son joined their family, completing the home they had created together. On warm summer evenings, neighbors passing by the Blackwood residence would often pause, drawn by the sound of Zara's voice floating through open windows, singing lullabies to her children or performing impromptu duets with visiting musicians. No one ever suggested she lower her volume or restrain her enthusiasm. In Copper Ridge, Zara Blackwood's voice had become as much a part of the landscape as the mountains that surrounded them, powerful, beautiful, and entirely her own. And sometimes, when the theater was empty and the children were asleep, Adam would sit alone in the back row while Zara performed just for him, her voice filling the space he had built with the love that had transformed both their lives. In those moments, they would remember the unlikely beginning of their story, a woman banished for being too loud, a man who saw not disruption but beauty in her unrestrained spirit, and the stage that became the foundation for a life neither could have imagined on that dusty road where they first met.